Now let's practice a lasagna noodle. How do you practice a lasagna noodle? Well, we're just going to make one. So lasagna noodles are very easy. They're a rectangle. So let's create a new layer, and this is going to be our noodle layer. And on that noodle layer, I'm going to take my rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to draw a lasagna noodle. Okay? Just like that. Looks just like a lasagna noodle, minus the little ruffles. Go to your color picker in your toolbar, grab a lasagna noodle color, which is going to be kind of in the yellowy, creamy area right there. And we're going to fill this selected area on this layer. You know what would be great for that? The paint bucket tool. And because we have our selection active and we have our layer active, with our paint bucket tool, it's only going to fill what's inside that selection on that blank layer. Don't be painting on the background layer there because those pixels will go ahead and merge with the background, and what I'm going to show you will not work. There's our noodle, okay? Now, yes, I know that this is a very flat lasagna noodle, but we need to add a little bit of fun to this. So we're going to do our highlights and shadows, which are going to require a layer for each. So I'm going to create a new layer that says shadow, create a new layer that says highlight, and we're going to have some fun with brushes. Now the shadow layer is our noodle, but just a substantially darker color. Click on your color picker, that color that we were using. I'm going to drag it way down and get a much darker color. Going back to my brush here, I'm going to right click and I'm going to use a hard round brush. Actually a soft round brush. You can choose the hard round brush, but then you can adjust the softness as well. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to go in and do a size of 60 pixels. Okay, there it is. Now it's a soft brush, okay, so it's going to give us these little dots right here, which is awesome. What I want to do is I want to put evenly spaced dots all the way along here, okay? I'm not going to go ahead and do click, click, click because there's no way I'm ever going to get them in the right distance and on the same plane. So let's go up to our options bar in our brush and click on the brush settings panel. What I want to do is set the spacing here so I get lots of space in between, and I want you to set the spacing to 150%. Close out of the brush settings, and on the shadow layer, I'm going to click my cursor here at the end, go and place my cursor at the other end. It doesn't need to be touching the noodle or not, and I'm going to hold down Shift and click, which is going to give us all these little dots. I'm going to go back to my Move tool, which is a letter V, and I'm going to park those so that they kind of balance out in the lasagna. Now I want to do the exact same thing on the top, but the last thing I'm going to do is create a new layer and then try to paint the exact same thing. No way. I've got my shadow layer. I'm going to Option or Alt, click and drag, and I'm also going to hold down my Shift key to make sure that when I Option or Alt, click and drag and duplicate that layer, I don't start wandering all over the place. Shift is going to constrain it so it stays in line. I now have two shadow layers here, and I'm going to keep them both separate, okay? Don't want to mess with them. Okay? I'm going to do my highlight layer, which is going to require me to go back to my lasagna noodle layer, grab my brush tool, hold down my Option or Alt to sample the color of the lasagna noodle, go back to my color picker, get a lighter version, and we run out of room, so I'm going to go to my saturation button. I'm going to desaturate to get a lighter look. And on my highlight layer, make sure you click on the highlight layer, don't be painting on anything else. I'm going to do the exact same process that we did with these dots. But on the highlight layer, I'm going to park my cursor in between my shadow dots here, not on the shadow layer, on the highlight layer. I'm going to click once, then I'm going to come down here and hold down my Shift key and Shift click again, which is going to give me all these little light dots. A little bit hard to see, so I'll turn those off. And you can see little highlights right there. Go to your highlight layer, grab your Move tool, Option or Alt, click and drag those up. And now we have our highlights and our shadows. Now, I want all these to stay inside the lasagna noodle, so I'm going to clip all of these to the noodle by parking my cursor in between the noodle layer and the next one up above, and Option or Alt click between the dividers on all the subsequent layers. Now, all the highlights and the shadows are clipped right to my original lasagna noodle. Now these are way too dark, so I'm going to click on the shadow, but I want to adjust both the shadows together. So I'm going to shift click and I'm going to select both of these so that I can then adjust the opacity overall on both of them instead of one at a time. I'm also going to set the blend mode to multiply because I want these to not sit on top like this kind of ghosty apparition. And I'm going to cut the opacity way back. I'm going to select the highlight layer, shift click and select the other highlight layer, cut back the opacity of those as well, and set those blending modes of those to screen. I think the shadow layers are a little bit intense, so I'm just going to knock those down a little bit more. And there we have our lasagna noodle, all with highlights and shadows. Now I know you were thinking, oh, a lasagna noodle is just wavy. But you know, having it look wavy and having it be wavy, I don't know. It's a hard call. But you know what? You just made a very, very convincing looking lasagna noodle, one with the little wavy things, and you probably learned something. Those little wavy things are just simply highlights and shadows. And now you're probably going to run and look at a lasagna noodle and be like, no, it's actually wavy. What is it? Food for thought.